What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. Today, it is What If Wednesday, mock draft day. We're going to be talking about some mock drafts, 3-round mock drafts that we cooked up right ahead of the 2023 NFL Draft. We are just over 1 week away from the start of the draft. You guys excited? Let us know down in the comment section because you know that we are certainly excited to cover the 2023 NFL Draft and see exactly what the New York Giants decide to do with all of their draft picks. But we're going to go ahead and predict a few of their draft picks today in this episode, just going through the first 3 rounds. No trades, nothing too fancy, just kind of doing a predictive mock draft, what could happen depending on how the draft board falls for the Giants in these first 3 rounds and how they might choose to use these picks to address some of their biggest positions of need. So we're going to go ahead and dive into our mock drafts, but before we do, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what's the first pick in your 3-round mock draft?
I am doing tremendous, and yes, am I getting tired of mock drafts? Absolutely, but we're going to do them until the draft next week because there are still a lot of players left to kind of dive into, and as the board continues to unravel and projected players are dropping and falling based on different measurements and analysis, we're finding out now that the wide receiver unit this year, the wide receiver class this year is not as exciting as a lot of people thought. There are some really good talents. There's a lot of value to be had. Ultimately, you never know if a player is going to elevate their game to the next level and just become an absolute stud. A lot of great receivers have been drafted in the second rounds and beyond that. Doesn't only have to be first-round stars. So the Giants could end up finding themselves with a pretty good selection at number 25. Now, yesterday we talked about a trade back, but today we're going to stay put. Today we're going to take kind of the best player available at the positions the Giants do need right now. And I wrote an article about 10 minutes ago regarding the wide receiver core for this Big Blue squad. Now, they allocated a lot of resources towards bolstering it. You look at bringing back, Sterling Shepard. You go out and sign Paris Campbell. You trade for Darren Waller, who's basically a receiver. And then you have some, holdovers like Darius Slayton. You have Isaiah Hodgins and Wan'Dale Robinson. And the big trend with most of those players is that a lot of them are injury prone or are coming off big injuries, right? Wan'Dale Robinson's coming off an ACL tear. Paris Campbell played 17 games for the first time in his career. He had never played more than 7 games before last season. Sterling Shepard hasn't played more than 7 games since 2020. And Darren Waller has had a lot of injury kind of issues the last 2 seasons as well. So the Giants are playing with fire here. If they start to go down with this injury bug again, they're going to find themselves really thin at the position once again. So with the 25th overall pick, I'm going to stick to our guns. I'm going to stick to what we've been talking about for a very long time. And I'm going to take the guy that I've been really high on the entire time, which is Jordan Addison. I love Jordan Addison. I love his style. I love the fact that he's an elite route runner. I love the fact that he has been extremely productive at the collegiate level for a very long time. He's had some issues with the drops in the past, but that's an issue that I think can be fixed at the next level with proper coaching. A lot of times it's just fundamental based, but his ability to create separation and run routes very effectively is quite prevalent on the film, and you can see he has some good speed, especially his acceleration from stop to go is really nice, and his change of direction is very solid. So I do like Jordan Addison as a player that has WR1 upside, and he can play on the outside. The Giants don't need a slot receiver. They need a guy who can play inside and out. Jordan Addison can do just that. He can move around, and he's got a pretty decent bill of health to his name, so I do like the fact that the Giants would be bringing in a guy that is an impact player immediately and shores up some of the concerns that I have in the wide receiver core, which is essentially that we cannot rely on a lot of these players to be healthy for a full season. So Jordan Addison's my pick at 25. I'd love to know what you guys think about that in the comments section. But Anthony, what is your reaction to that, and what is your pick of the 25th overall selection?
Yeah, so firstly, I'll react to your pick. I like that pick. I think it's a great pick. In fact, it's the one that I've been making in almost every mock draft for the last several months. I think that Jordan Addison truly is a perfect fit for the New York Giants. You look at what Brian Daboll likes from his wide receivers. Jordan Addison just fits that mold, and I've been really high on him throughout the pre-draft process. I've referred to him in the past as the best receiver in the class, and I absolutely still think that he could be, though. Like a lot of NFL GMs and scouts, I am a little skeptical after a pretty underwhelming 2023 NFL scouting combine. However, I still do see the talent. I see obviously the production from Jordan Addison during his collegiate career was off the charts good. Fred Biletnikoff winner in 2021. I mean, that season was just dominance over at Pitt. But going to USC, he didn't have the best season. He was hampered with an injury, and so there are some concerns to his game, which is why I do think he might slide to the 25th overall pick and could end up being a home run selection if drafted by the New York Giants. So again, I really like that pick. Not the pick that I made because I didn't want us to have the same picks. I want to switch it up a little bit here. So I want to propose a kind of different selection here. One that I don't think I would necessarily make myself, but if I'm going by a predictive mock draft, kind of trying to predict what could happen in this upcoming draft, I think there's a good chance that the Giants might take center John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota. So that's going to be my pick in this draft. Again, not necessarily what I would do, but I will make the argument for it. And the thing is that the Giants are reportedly, quote, locked onto John Michael Schmitz. They have a lot of interest in the guy, but they're not the only team. A bunch of other teams also have an interest. Here's some other quotes. Several teams have Schmitz rated as the top center. If Schmitz happens to be available to Seattle at pick 37, it would be manna from heaven for the franchise. So basically saying that if he is, that's a very interesting way that Tony Pauline of Pro Football Network worded that. But what he's saying is that the Seahawks are not passing up on John Michael Schmitz with the 37th overall pick. So in the second round, a lot of Giants fans want the team to wait until pick 57 and draft John Michael Schmitz. They simply cannot do that. He's pretty much a guarantee to come off of the board by 37 the latest. So if the Giants really want to find their day one starting center who can be the starter at center for the next 4 to 5 years, they're going to have to go ahead and draft him with a 25th overall pick. So if John Michael Schmitz is the player that they're locked onto, that's the guy that they want, they simply just have to take him in the first round. Unless they get creative, trade down a little bit. We discussed that in yesterday's episode, Alex. If you guys haven't seen that, go check that out. So there are some other ways that the Giants can draft John Michael Schmitz, but ultimately, the safest way for them to guarantee that they get their center is to draft JMS at 25 overall. Again, not necessarily what I would do, but kind of just going based on the rumors that we're seeing here, how much of a market John Michael Schmitz has, and how much interest the Giants have in him. I do think there's a really good shot he is the pick with the 25th overall selection in this year's draft. So, Alex, before we move into round 2, what would your initial reaction to that selection be if the Giants were to go ahead with John Michael Schmitz at the 25th overall pick?
I mean, look, you guys know this. I'm not the biggest proponent of drafting centers in the first round. I don't think that it's necessarily a smart thing to do. But if the Giants feel as though he's going to be a Pro Bowl level center for the next 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you get a guy that you think is going to be that good. I trust Joe Shane. I trust Brian Dable. I trust their opinions. Now, do I think the Giants could find a more than fine serviceable center in the second round? Absolutely. I think that that's actually probably the way that they go. But if they feel really highly about JMS, they feel like he can be a lockdown guy. He's going to protect Daniel Jones. He's going to protect their big investment at the quarterback position. Then go with it. Do what you have to do. Get the best player available on your board and don't look back. So I can get on board with it if that's the way they want to go. Personally, it's not my preferred selection. I'd rather go with a positional value of a little bit higher, like a receiver or a cornerback even. But if they think that he's that good, then I guess, I could live with the decision. I think that it would be a fine selection since he would take over, the center spot for a very long time. NFL considers him a player that'll be a above average starter by his second year, and that's certainly hard to come by. And the Giants have had basically been playing Russian roulette at center for a very long time, and it's time we solve the spot one way or another.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the right mindset here. Again, it's not necessarily the pick that you want to make, but maybe it's the pick that you have to make just based on the draft board and the competition surrounding the ability to draft this player. And again, at the end of the day, it might not be the flashy pick, might not be the exciting pick that New York Giants fans are hoping to see. Of course, we want to see that superstar wide receiver or cornerback. That's what most Giants fans want to see. But taking the safe pick, the safe bet in the first round isn't always the wrong thing to do. It's not always a bad option just to take the most safe selection that you can so that you guarantee that you hit on something in the crapshoot that is the NFL draft. But let's move on to round 2. This is a player who I also feel like is a pretty safe pick. Now, this might be a little bit early to draft him at 57 overall, but this is a player who I feel has a very high floor, was very productive in college, and plays at a position of need for the New York Giants, and that's wide receiver Rashee Rice out of SMU. I really like this guy. Listen, I don't think that he's necessarily got that WR1 elite wide receiving potential that the Giants are probably hoping for. But adding this guy to your receiving room could be really beneficial because he's got some size to him and he's got the ability to make some really tough contested catches. I know that's not necessarily what Daniel Jones likes to throw to, but if you're looking at the Giants receiving core right now, they have a bunch of really short route runner guys. No one who's really physical enough and has a big presence on the outside other than maybe Isaiah Hodgins. But adding a guy like Rashee Rice here, young, ran a 4.5 140-yard dash, isn't the fastest player, but that's pretty decent speed for an outside wide receiver, and he ran an elite 10-yard split. I believe his 10-yard split was 1.49 off the top of my head, which was in the 98th percentile or something. So his acceleration is phenomenal. His long speed isn't the best, but his acceleration getting to his top speed is really solid. So he's got the ability to release off the line of scrimmage with some speed. And he also ran a 41, or he did not run. He recorded a 41-inch vertical jump and a 10-foot 8-inch broad jump. So this guy's really explosive. And my favorite thing about him is if you turn on any of his film, any of his highlights, whatever, just watch the guy. He pretty much turns into Randy Moss at the most random times ever on the field. Like, he'll just go up there, make a reception over 3 different cornerbacks, and just drop your jaw. You just can't believe what you've seen with Rashee Rice. He really does have that fantastic ability, and I also think he's a pretty decent route runner, and he's very versatile. He's played inside, he's played outside, he's moved all across the offense. He's got the ability to make a lot of different plays and to do a lot of different things for an offense, which is something that we know the Giants really do value. So, here's a quote from Joe Marino of the Draft Network on Rashee Rice. In year one, Rice's versatility and appeal to all levels of the field should give him the opportunity to be a top 4 option for an NFL offense. By year 3, Rice has the makings of an impact starter that is a featured component of his offense. So again, when you're looking at wide receivers in round 2, that sounds great. Getting a guy that can develop by year 3, be your number 1 guy, but in the first year contribute in your top 4, that's kind of what the Giants need right now, in my opinion, because especially if you're looking at some of these guys that they have, they're not long-term solutions. Paris Campbell's only signed to a 1-year deal, Darius Slayton's only signed to a 2-year deal, and Sterling Shepard's on a 1-year deal. So some of these guys might be out of the door within the next year to 2 years. So having a guy like Rashee Rice who can make an impact in year 1 and then take over in a larger role by year 3 makes a lot of sense to me, and I like the potential that this guy possesses to be a developmental wide receiver prospect for the New York Giants. Again, adding an element to their offense that they don't really have right now from the wide receiver position. So if you're looking at value picks in round 2, I think that Rashee Rice does make quite a bit of sense considering it's a big need for the Giants, and again, he adds something that they don't necessarily have to the position. So I would like this selection in round 2, but Alex, I'm curious to know what your take would be on Rashee Rice at 57 overall, and then of course who you have selected in your mock draft with this second round pick.
I mean, look, if the Giants are going to get a receiver in the first round, you might as well go with someone that has a ton of potential in the second round. Rashee Rice, some mock drafts have him landing in the 80s and some have them in the 70s. So if you go with him in the second round, you might be taking a risk, but the reality is he's a very good player. Like you said, he shows up out of nowhere with ridiculous body control, makes some insane catches. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but he does have that body control where he can go up and make a catch and be very physical and just shines. Like this, it's the moments though. That's the thing is like when you get Rashee Rice, you're getting moments of stardom. You're not getting consistent wide receiver 1 performance. You're getting consistent inconsistencies, So, you're taking that risk, but a good coaching staff like the Giants, like Brian Daboll, like Mike Kafka, may be able to find the best of Rashee Rice and get the absolute maximum out of him. And that's kind of where you look at and say, when you have a player that's capable of making these ridiculous catches, being explosive, has those moments of just pure like, holy crap, that was incredible. It's there. He's capable. It's in there, his being to do those type of things. But how do you get him to be consistent with those things? Sometimes he just lacks the effort. Sometimes he just doesn't put all of that effort into it. Maybe the coaching staff and the Giants are able to do that with him. So if the Giants go with a center in first round or a corner, whatever it might be, and go with Rashee Rice in the second, a guy that has the moments, has those, wow, like that's a top receiver guy type of moments, and then makes it so that he does it a lot more frequently, you're walking away with an absolute steal, right? He led the team in SMU, the Mustangs, in receptions. Each of the last 3 seasons, he gets high volume targets, and no one is even close to him on that. So you know he can handle a big workload, has a good health history. He's a starter for a couple seasons. You love to see that. It's just more about consistency. And I think that maybe our coaching staff is the perfect place for a guy like that to land because you can get the maximum value out of a player like that. So yeah, I would be okay with that if the Giants went in that direction. Now, my selection, because I didn't go with the center in the first round, is going to be Luke Weipler out of what's it called? He's out of USC. So Luke Weipler is is it USC?
Ohio State.
Ohio State. Yeah, sorry, Ohio State. I was thinking about Jordan Addison, USC. Luke Weipler, really good player, has been a starter for quite some time. In 2021, made 13 starts in the middle of that offensive line. He's been very, very consistent for that team for a very long time. He did not allow a sack over the course of 2021. He's been very, very good, and he retained, obviously, that job for 2022. He was tremendous in pass blocking. He was great in run blocking. He allowed just 1 sack and 499 or 449 pass blocking snaps. Really good hands. So he's a little bit undersized, but, a lot of centers are. You look at guys even like John Feliciano, a little bit shorter, not the biggest reach in the world, transferred from the guard position to the center position. There's going to be some qualms with anyone, but he got really great athletic scores, really good agility. He can get to the second level very quickly. He's got that alpha dog mentality the Giants love. You do like to see that. And the thing is, if he's undersized, the question is, can he hold up against bigger defensive tackles? He's 6'3", 303 pounds. He's not a small guy, that's for sure. But the thing is that some people were suggesting maybe he can move to guard. His frame is too small for guard, so he is a specific center in this case. That's he wins with leverage. Like, that's his game. He wins with leverage, good hand placement, good fundamentals. The anchor is where he might have some problems. So maybe the Giants try to help him build a little bit more muscle mass, have him improve upon that anchor. And another thing I really like about Luke Weipler, he's not even 22 years old yet. He's really, really young. His frame is still building out. He's not even reached that full physical capacity. So the Giants have a lot of room to work with a player like this. I do like that a lot. What are your thoughts about Luke Weipler and potentially landing him in the second round?
Yeah, so Luke Weipler is a player that I really like. I mean, I did a video on him solo a couple weeks ago, and I discussed the possibility of drafting him with the 57th overall pick and how I think that he actually would be a very sound option for the New York Giants. I like Luke Weipler, what he brings to the game. I like his athleticism. I think it's great that, he was a starter in a big school like Ohio State University, went up against some of the top competition and really fared well. He didn't give up many sacks. He was great in pass protection, and again, love the athleticism that he has and possesses in the run game. You kind of compare him as a prospect to a guy like John Michael Schmitz. John Michael Schmitz maybe not as athletic, but really has that anchor, is really the safe pick at that center spot. But if you really want to kind of swing for the fences, get a guy with a little bit more potential here to be a real dynamic piece of your offensive line, I think you go with a guy like Luke Weipler. Again, maybe he has some concerns regarding his size or his technique, a little bit of consistency issues, but you bank on that athleticism being the catalyst to reaching your maximum potential with a guy like Luke Weipler. So I really like what he brings to the table. If he's there at 57 overall, I do think he's a great pick for the New York Giants, granted that they don't go center in the first round. So, I mean, your mock draft, pretty good so far. I like Jordan Addison, Luke Weipler, two of my top guys in this class. You're kind of crushing this one even more than I am, which is interesting because we're mock drafting in completely different ways, and I think I like yours better than mine. Well, let's move on to round 3. Linebacker Deion Henley. I know a lot of viewers of this channel really like Deion Henley. I remember I did a live stream a few weeks ago, and a lot of you really put me on to Deion Henley. Now, his draft stock has risen quite significantly lately. He might not last till round 3 anymore. However, if he's there, it's a home run selection. Deion Henley is an aggressive, run-stopping middle linebacker with the ability to play out in coverage because he has loads of athleticism. He makes some incredible plays against tight ends in pass coverage. He can cover the flats from the inside linebacker position. He has true speed from the linebacker spot. Out of Washington State, I really like the sideline speed that he has here. And when you're looking at that linebacker position for the New York Giants, it's something that they've started to solve, but I don't think they've completely solved just yet. Bobby Okereke, great signing. That's your starting inside linebacker, but who's playing next to him? Right now, I'm not sure. I'm not really a huge fan of the likes of Gerard Davis. I know that we've got some of these younger guys like Micah McFadden and Darian Beavers, but there's still massive question marks to me. Darian Beavers was a late round pick who had a season ending injury before he even got onto the regular season field. So how much do you really expect out of him? How much stock can you really put into him to be in your starting lineup this year? I'm not sure. Micah McFadden played a lot last year, struggled a lot last year as a rookie. Now again, he's a rookie, he's got time to develop and grow, but it doesn't hurt to add in another day 2 pick to that linebacker core in Deion Henley, especially when it's a player who just has wicked amounts of potential because of his athleticism. This past year, he totaled 106 total tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 3 forced fumbles, and 1 interception for Washington State. He also added 4 sacks to the stat sheet, demonstrating he has the ability to blitz right up the middle, which is something that we know Wink Martindale truly values quite a bit from his inside linebackers. So what you're looking at here with Deion Henley, a guy who could do a little bit of everything. He has sideline-to-sideline speed, can cover tight ends, can blitz, can get involved in the running game. Just looks like a perfect fit for Wink Martindale's defense in my eyes. So if he does happen to fall into the 3rd round, that would be my selection. I would probably sprint to the podium with that one. So, Alex, I'll turn it back to you to hear your 3rd round pick, but also, what are your thoughts on the potential of taking a linebacker in the 3rd round, and in particular, a guy like Deion Henley?
Look, Henley seems like a pretty awesome prospect. I actually haven't even done much research on him, but it seems like you hit on a couple of things that I really liked. Specifically, he was a former wide receiver, so he understands the receiving game, right? And I think that's really cool. Like his transition to linebacker, and he's been such a good linebacker. He understands route concepts. He understands the break. He understands where to put his hands, where the receivers are trying to catch the football. He could end up becoming a really nice steal. I think this is a player that I would love to see in the Giants draft. I mean, pairing him with Bobby Okereke, that would be sick. That would be a great duo because right now the linebacker core, aside from Okereke, is certainly a question mark. So a freak athlete like that with wide receiver experience, understanding pass coverage, with his athleticism, could be fun to watch. That could be a really nice pick, and the sideline to sideline speed certainly doesn't hurt either. So I definitely like that. He had a lot of tackles last year. But my pick was actually interesting because I wanted to go with a cornerback. Having not addressed cornerback in the 1st or 2nd round and knowing our lack of depth there as well, I wanted to at least give us a chance to find somebody with really solid upside. So this one you may not like this one. Some people may not like this one. I went with Eli Ricks out of Alabama. Ricks kind of shit the bed in the combine, if we're being quite honest. He had a really bad combine. His athleticism scores are really poor. But on the field, he shows great man coverage abilities in the short to intermediate portions of the field. So I do think that there's a lot of value. He transferred from LSU to Alabama. When he was with LSU, a lot of people were saying he looked like Derek Stingley. Then he was injured. Then he transfers to Alabama. Didn't really pick it up. Keely Ringo was going away before him. Obviously, another cornerback out of Alabama in this draft class. But Eli Ricks has some really nice potential. The problem is, he may not be able to survive on an island immediately. I don't think he's a starter immediately, but I think he's a very, very nice developmental piece that could be a starter next year. So I would even be willing to say this. You grab a guy like Eli Ricks in the 3rd round, have him compete with Cordell Flott and Aaron Robinson for starting snaps, and just let them battle it out. Cordell Flott, our former 3rd round pick out of LSU last year, a lot of people really like him. Let those guys battle it out. Let them fight for starting opportunities. I think a good competition, a good battle there would go a long way in helping these guys. So you do like to see that. I do think that would be a nice selection for the Giants because Eli Ricks does have a ton of upside. If I'll read you the strengths and weaknesses that NFL have on him. So the strengths are he's a former 5-star recruit with prototypical size and length. He stands at 6'2" and 188 pounds, so he's got some really nice size. I imagine he even gains a little bit more weight to put some more power into his game. He's a big possession receiver, so the big possession receivers play right into his strengths. So you look at guys in our division, AJ Brown, a really good one. We need to have a big physical cornerback on him who can really play against those physical guys. So Eli Ricks may be a good setup for him in the future. He squats tight to the receivers from press, lands long jabs to pads from his back pedal, asserts his will when phasing route downfield, size and length. stack contested catches in his favor, 5 career interceptions, including 2 return for touchdowns. He's aggressive, has that kind of dog mentality, which you like to see in a Wink Martindale defense. His weaknesses, however, limited starting experience over the last 2 seasons, which is essentially the point being is that he needs more opportunity. He needs more experience. He needs more reps. He needs more development. And we have one of the best DB coaches in football with Jerome Henderson. He lacks patience to wait out, release fakes from press. Speed will cruise past him if he fails to get a hand on the receiver. So his straight line speed is problematic at times. That's where he's going to have the most kind of issue. So against big possession receivers, guys that are a little bit slower, he's going to have a really good strength to match up with them. But the faster guys, the Tyreek Hills of the world, you don't want him on them. You want Adoree Jackson on guys like that. So he lacks the twitch in his transitions and closing bursts, could have issues staying close to dynamic route runners, below average overlap to help teammates from zone, doesn't help enough urgency and run support. So the run support, another thing. Again, a lot of these weaknesses just kind of scream lack of experience to me. He does have athletic limitations, but I think there are ways to develop those things. I think there are ways to get the most out of a player, and ultimately, you're in the 3rd round for a reason. You're a developmental piece. You're not a player that's going to start immediately. Like I said, some people may not like this selection. I actually think I'd rather go with yours, to be honest. I like Henley a little bit more than my pick. So I think I would actually transition over to that and say, I think I'd go with him at that linebacker spot. But again, it opens up a huge liability at cornerback for us. So we're really relying on Cordell Flott to step up big for us in 2023, if that's the case. But what do you think about Eli Ricks as a developmental piece, someone that has really good short to intermediate, coverage abilities? They call him the human blanket in that area, but the downfield, kind of portion of his game could be a liability, which is definitely concerning.
So my biggest concern with Eli Ricks is the fact that his athletic profile is going to make him a very limited player. So it's kind of like the pick that I made with Deion Henley, so athletic, uber athletic, that gives him unlimited potential to kind of just grow into the player that he needs to be. With Eli Ricks, he's going to have a limited skill set because he has a limited athleticism. He doesn't have that, unbelievable testing at the NFL Combine that tells you if we can get him to use the speed correctly or use his twitchiness correctly, we can make him a really good player. He doesn't have that. So he's really just got to be technically sound. So you really just have to develop this player into being a smart football player, which, that could totally work out. I think that Eli Ricks could be a good player, but I just think that as a limited cornerback in the 3rd round, not necessarily the MO of the New York Giants in recent years. I mean, Joe Shane, if you take a look at it last year, like you mentioned, the relative athletic score for Eli Ricks, I believe that all but one of the draft picks in Joe Shane's last draft class, all of them except for one, had elite athleticism scores. So I'm not sure if he would be willing to take a guy like Eli Ricks very early in this draft. But again, I like the prospect. I think that he has the ability to play well in a zone coverage, cover 3 defense, similar to the one that the Giants play, but maybe he lacks the aggressiveness, the aggression and the athleticism of playing that as well. And I will say with Deion Henley, I think everyone's going to love that pick in the 3rd round, but there's also a chance that he doesn't make it that far. PFF has him as their number 1 linebacker on the board now, so he might go a lot earlier, but some of these other websites still have him as the 3rd, 4th, or 5th linebacker on the board. The draft is a crapshoot. You never know who's going to slide. Deion Henley, if he's there in round 3, it's a perfect pick. But I will just say, here's one other player that I would throw out there as a alternative solution. If Deion Henley does end up going very early, Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati. He's very small, very undersized, 5'10", 231 pounds from the linebacker position. Honestly sounds absurd, but he is a true blitzer. He was the best blitzing linebacker in this. He is the best blitzing linebacker in the 2023 NFL draft class, and we know that Wink Martindale loves to blitz his linebackers. So if you're sitting there in round 3, you want a developmental guy, someone who can get after the quarterback from the off-ball linebacker spot, Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati, perfect fit for the New York Giants if they're unable to land a big-time guy like a Deion Henley earlier in the draft. So there's another option for you all out there. You got a bonus pick in this 3-round mock draft. Ivan Pace Jr., another player to keep an eye on. And of course, we dove into 7 players in this mock draft video. And we're going to continue to do that every single day leading up to the 2023 NFL draft, which is just over 1 week away. I am struggling right now to contain my excitement. I cannot wait. It's draft season, baby. Let's go. And of course, we're going to continue to keep you all updated and keep discussing all these prospects leading up to the NFL draft right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Leave a like if you enjoyed this one and comment your thoughts on these players down below. Drop your 3-round mock drafts down below. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. But we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one and Let's go Giants.
TVSO.